finding man at Bed Bath & Beyond, the home goods section, this.
Seriously?
Yeah. I did not really have a boyfriend until I was like 18. And I was taller than all the boys. I didn't have the confidence, we had to learn to be confident, right? Some of us are confident from the get-go, right? But some of us have to learn to be confident. And that means by thinking that anything is possible and not being afraid to get it. And I think a lot of it has to do with energy, having the right energy, putting yourself out there. So when you have the right energy, you attract the right energy. I see a lot of women and somehow they're with guys that are gaslighters or guys that are not good to them or guys that are the players. I was a late bloomer. It took me a while to get confident. I think is when I started modeling is where it really helped me gain confidence, which is, listen, I'm just as good as they are. Why can't I do that? I think mentors are really important when it comes to that. And I think people consider me a mentor in that way because, I've been divorced, married, divorced again, married again, dating, had long-term relationships, right? But, I think it's about life cycles and timing. I think for me, it took me a while after I got divorced the first time to find love again. And I dated, but I wasn't really ready. My heart was in the right place. I feel like our heart and our soul tells us what to do. Dating apps can be good. I think that a lot of people have met on dating apps. I was on dating apps for a certain amount of time, and it was during COVID, so it was very hard to be out there dating. So I don't know if we want to talk about that, but the point is that, I think dating apps can be good. I think there's a lot of work involved. I think that, you really have to set your mind to it. It's like almost having a job, so if you have time for that job, and you really into it and you really want to find, a soulmate, find love, find, a partner in life to share your life with, dating apps, I think are fine. I personally like to meet people in person, because I think dating apps are a lot of work. Going to places you wouldn't normally go is probably a good idea, like traveling, going to embassy parties, finding man at Bed Bath & Beyond, the home goods section, this.
Seriously?
Yeah. There's going to be a guy in the appliances section trying to get a toaster or a microwave because, he had to leave the apartment. He has to start over. I feel like you can totally pick up a guy in Bed Bath & Beyond. Well, for the 40s and 50s, I feel you because I've been there too. And I think really the trick is to not really care that much about it. I mean, the minute you care too much, it becomes brutally obvious. And I feel like if you just are happy with yourself first, I mean, we all want to have a partner. We all want to find love, right? We all want to have that person in our life. But I think the minute you let go of trying to predict the future, because you cannot, that's the key. Like in my cabaret, if I thought, oh my God, what if I fail? What if what if I can't do it? What if I stink? That's the chance you take, and you can't predict the outcome, right? So you can't really predict love. You can manifest love. You can write down is exactly what you want. You can put those thoughts in the universe, because what happens is people talk badly to themselves. People do it all the time. We're our own worst enemy. So positive self-talk is really so important. Like what you say, what you speak to the world makes a big difference. So it's, if you put out there what you really want, right, but not predict the outcome, it will come to you. But you can't force it. Sometimes people just go on a date to have a date. And, I've learned that I'd often feel bad about myself after, because generally it was kind of forced. So I didn't really want to go out with that guy, but I did just to have a date kind of thing. It's really about enjoying being on your own, enjoying girlfriends, enjoying your best friends, and not thinking that, I have to have somebody. Again, there we go, like forcing it on ourselves. And oftentimes, the date will be bad. and then, you feel bad. And so, I've learned that, I only do the things that I really want to do. I love who I want, but I don't keep what I don't want anymore. When you lead with kindness, you lead with love, and you lead with your gut instinct, it's very hard to go wrong. It really is hard to mess it up if that's how you roll. Now, the minute we get up all in here, this is when the problems happen. Listen, there's a lot of taboo old dating tips, like the girl shouldn't make the first move. Just like, you shouldn't put your hat on your bed. Or if you spill salt, you have to throw it over your shoulder. You could believe all that stuff, but I don't. I feel like the time we live in today is, women are in charge. They're in the driver's seat. Women have to let a man in. I do believe that. For example, the Queen of England, she will extend her hand to you, and that gives you access to her. You wouldn't give your hand to the Queen because you just don't. And again, same thing with meeting men, right? It's the woman who really should extend her hand to the man, which means welcome. Great example. You're out with 3 girls. You're having dinner. You're at a table. You're having drinks. There's some cute guys at the bar, right? Are you going to walk up to the bar? Well, it's not really that ladylike to walk up to the bar, right? But this is when the waiters come in very handy, which is give the waiter a note that says, please join us for a drink. Now you've given permission to come over to the table. Now he's not going to come over to the table because it's too daunting to walk up to 3 girls. So you're going to invite him to walk up to 3 girls. And I think, it's all about the invitation. And it's not, men have to ask first. And I think that's old news. And I think women are much more sophisticated now and much more empowered today and more savvy. Well, I always say never bring old baggage to a new relationship, meaning you don't want to talk about all the problems that you have with your existing family, right? You want to keep it positive. You want to let them know that, yeah, you have children. That would be good. Being honest is key. Yes, I do have children. I do have an ex-husband, and I think, people can. I always say never complain and never explain. You don't really owe people a lot of explanation, especially at the very beginning of a relationship. I think that keeping it light and keeping it bright are very important because you do not want to bring old baggage to a new relationship. You can't compare people. You can't compare one person to another person. You can, but it's an old story. Don't hang on to old stories because they're just a story. It's just an old story, and it's not a new story. What we're doing is we're living in the moment. We're not predicting the future. We want to stay in the now, which is, this is where I'm going to put my energy into. I'm not going to put my energy into the past, and I'm not going to try to predict the future. I'm just going to try and be as happy with the moment as I can be and not try to think about the past or compare people or try to think about the future and what it holds. Well, let's think of, let's take, for example, Valentine's Day. People are always asking me, how do you get a date for Valentine's Day? Well, I say get a really nice Valentine's Day card and give it to somebody that you want to go on a Valentine's date with. Makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? What can they say? No. Oh, poor you. Well, guess what? It'll be Galentine's Day. Don't worry about it. Take the stress off of a Valentine's date or a New Year's Eve date. Do you know what I'm saying? Just be happy. I know it sounds difficult, but you know what? If you're happy, you're going to draw that kind of happy energy and you'll be surprised. Again, it's the positive self-talk. There is the knowingness of, I'm going to be okay if I don't have a date, right? And then there is I'm going to take a chance. I might have to go home alone, but at least I made a chance. Or at least I took a chance. So, write a love note. My mentor used to say, Princess Helen Lowe, used to say, Lou, always be the first to leave the party, never the last. Keep them guessing where you're gone. Now, I failed a lot at that one. But the times that I did do it, where you make eye contact with a guy and you kind of let them know with your eyes that you're interested, right? And then you kind of disappear. It works every single time. But you have to have the balls to do it.
Yeah.
A lot of people are afraid if I don't go for it right now, I'm going to lose this guy. But it's really the way to go, as long as you know where to find him again.
Yeah.
That's important. Well, generally it's like, I have children, so I say, one of my kids needs me, I gotta jump. Sorry about that. You can always say one of my kids needs me. Now there's not going to be anything tragic, obviously, because you don't want to put things in the universe. Remember, whatever you put out there, be careful. Generally I'll go, I got to be somewhere with my kid, or I just, sometimes I'm just honest. Like, look, you know what? I think you're great, but I don't think this is going to work out. So, let's finish our drinks and, good luck. Why not? Why not show your cards? Why not? Why hide the deck? I mean, might as well show people your cards. Why waste their time? Why waste my time? So I think, listen, you could be brutally honest, but not brutal. It's called honesty, not brutal honesty. My son is in his 20s, right? And so, yeah, 20s is a no-go. But it just really depends on the person. I tend to stick to age appropriate. I have a son who is in his 20s. My daughter's 30. I can't even believe it. But it really depends on the person. I mean, I've known 40-year-olds who are very mature and are great, and I know 60-year-olds who are immature and not so great. So it's really age is a number, and that's not really what I care so much about. I mean, for me, I don't want to be the older one in a 30-year age gap. No, that's not for me. But I like to date age appropriate, to cut it short and sweet. A deal breaker for me is, when you're dealing with a narcissist, they don't ask you one thing about yourself. They just talk about themselves. And that was my first husband. I had a special connection from the get-go of The Real Housewives of New York with Jill Zerin, right? Jill Zerin actually is the one who found me and asked me to be on the show. And so I met Bobby Zerin with Jill. And he was the nicest guy on the planet. He's like, Jill would be like, Bobby, let's go, Bobby. And he'd go, just one more, Jill, just one more drink, He loved parties, and he just had a smile on his face all the time. And you know what I loved about Bobby? He doted over Jill. He adored the ground that she walked on. That's the kind of guy I want, is one who's got your back, he adores the ground you walk on, and who's attentive. Aging is about maintenance, I would say, these days, because it's really about maintaining what you can maintain, right? It's funny because we used to try to get rid of all the hair we have. Now we're just trying to keep all the hair we have, right? So, age is just, it's real. We're all going to get there, is the point. It's about maintaining, it's about maintenance, taking care of yourself, beauty treatments, spa days, and being happy. I feel like when people aren't happy, it just shows on your face. It's just riddled with, kind of pain, anxiety, and general, like, no light. You know what I mean? It's like, I think that if you're happy, you're doing the best you can, taking care of yourself the best you can, and having a good time at the same time. I mean, I'm talking happy is good times. So having a good time, taking care of yourself, finding time for yourself, traveling, and being curious. I think, being interested is what makes you interesting. So it's about expanding your horizons. It's about thinking about other ways in which you can keep that youth, which is, being around youthful people, being around creative people, doing something you've never done before, getting out of your comfort zone, because change is better than habit. It sucks. Gravity. Got the best of me.